Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Picking and Putting. It's Dr. Z here in the South Shore studios, along with Liberty Bill from some other South Shore studios. We're both in the attic, and we're both here to talk to you and talk a little sports. I was listening to those guys the other day on the morning call. I was going to go, hey, here we are. Here we are with Good Morning America. Yeah, these guys talk like that, but not me. Anyway.
Just us today. No NFL tight ends. No golf professionals. They're stuck with just us amateurs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just said it. I decided we should call this episode March Muddiness because nobody knows about that. Nobody knows about baseball. Well, I got a couple shout outs here. I'm going to start out with, I got three, and then you throw in any you've got. One for me is a shout out to the transfer portal. I was talking earlier today. I think, the way the world's changing, that's part of the problem with Patrick Ewing at Georgetown. He's gotten caught in the middle of this transition. The Big East has changed, obviously, but it's changed the way people look at going where they go, they're going to go where the schools that have money and stuff, Southeast Conference basketball is only going to grow. But the other one is one.
And it's going to get left behind by the transfer portal is Dabo Swinney. He is not using it to his advantage, and he will get left behind.
Well, that's also a conference issue. Also got to call out Mr. Manfred, the commissioner of baseball. I heard something earlier, and we'll get into that later, where Pablo Torre on ESPN called him. He said, well, he's basically a rodeo clown because he's just sent out there to defray all the don't yell at those guys. Don't yell at those guys. Talk to me. Ha, 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 I'm going to play golf.
That's a great analogy.
I like it. Isn't that a great one? And then the other one, which is more along the lines of the good one, is all the world sports federations for calling out Russia. Be it soccer, be it skiing, whatever. They basically just said, you're not participating, and they've shut them down.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even outside of sports, just the whole world is seemingly united. I mean, even here in Mecklenburg County, our ABC stores have pulled all the Russian vodka off the shelves there. And even at the smallest levels on video games, they're pulling the Russian teams off of there. It's just a united world front. It's cool to see.
Well, and then the Chelsea owner is actually, he was pulling his name from negotiations. Now he's actually going to sell I think the pressure is too big and, whatever. So he's going to sell his majority ownership in Chelsea, the English football club. You notice I said football club. Have you got?
You're up with the times now. You're a huge soccer fan. One game in.
Yeah, I got my Charlotte Crown hat on here for their opening game this weekend, where we're going to kick Atlanta's butt in terms of total attendance, where we play LA. So it'll be fun. It'll be a hopping place, and the weather's going to be great. So looking forward to it. You got any shout outs?
I do. This is the star of this year's Chicago Bulls. There's been a theory out there with the NBA. You have to tank. You have to lose a lot of games. You have to get lucky in the draft. And that's the only way to do it. Well, the Bulls are kind of doing something a little different, where they went out and spent some money and got some good players and are trying to win right away. And it's working. And specifically DeMar DeRozan, who folks might remember when he was up in Toronto. He was actually traded to San Antonio as part of the Kawhi Leonard trade that ultimately led to the championship in Toronto, kind of disappeared for a while. His dad recently died, so he was flying from San Antonio or wherever they were playing to LA constantly for a year during his dad's final days on Earth. So he's had it rough. But this year he's had an MVP candidacy type season, and he became the first player in NBA history to score 35 or more points while shooting 50% or better from the field in 7 straight games. Can you name the only other player in NBA history that did that for 6 straight games, scored 35 or more points at a clip? Too easy. But yeah, that's rare air to hear that name referenced in this era. And with all due respect to Wilt, I didn't watch him, you did, but he was right by the hoop, right? So he just put it in. DeMar DeRozan,
he was
the king of the mid-range.
Well, it was the anniversary of his 100th game. I think yesterday, maybe.
Yeah.
Or not the 100th anniversary, the anniversary. I think it was in the 50s. It was in Hershey, Pennsylvania or something with nobody in the stands. But
And
yeah,
DeMar's style of basketball, it's a throwback. You know, the modern NBA, a lot of teams, Steph Curry, I love the guy, but I hate what he's done to basketball, frankly. I don't like watching guys bomb three-pointers from 50 feet away over and over. DeMar DeRozan's old, unless it's your team. DeMar DeRozan's old school, man. He lives in that mid-range. And he gets threes the good old-fashioned way. The way he manipulates the defenders to get contact and get to the line and get 3 points. It's just a joy to watch that guy play.
Well, here's another shout out. It has nothing to do with that, but you're talking about great 3-point shooters. Okay, you got to call glass if you're Wisconsin on that shot. And then the other one was, I don't know if you haven't seen it, go watch the end of Florida State, Virginia. And Virginia takes the lead, and Florida State's got 1 second. And you know whose name comes up there with Kentucky and Duke. And this guy throws a perfect pass. He spins and shoots it, and they nail it, and they do a walk-off 3 to beat Virginia. And I mean, the crowd went, oh, I mean, it was amazing. It was really cool to watch.
It's a great way to start March.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then the top 7 of the top 10 go down. And then a couple of those, Arizona came back, beat Southern Cal, but Kentucky, not Kentucky, Kansas has lost 2 in a row. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just don't know. You just don't know. If somebody goes, I go back, this is before your time, but 1993, when University of North Carolina won the second championship for Coach Smith, they had a kid named Donald Williams.
Yeah, I remember him, the point guard, number 5.
He was in La La Land shooting threes. I'd love to look up his percentages, but he shot something like 60-70%. And he single-handedly carried them through the NCAA tournament. You know, he'd been okay during the season. He was a good player and all that, but he was on fire. So it was crazy. Well, let's get into talking a little baseball first, because that's your passion. I got in terms of this thing, I've got a few things to go forward with, but you know, you got the owners who locked out the players, and you know, everybody's looking at this. Well, it's money and money, and you know, both sides hate each other, and they're negotiating this, and you know, the owners will be fine without the season anyways. But one of the things that came up, there were 2 things that came up. One was, I was talking with my younger son about this and saying, well, he says, first of all, outside of the negotiation part of it, first of all, baseball has had a problem, and you've heard me say this, and I think, believe it or not, they're at the Ukrainian cusp here, because by that I mean soccer is coming in, and it's finally gotten to its critical mass in the United States. And in Charlotte, for example, the number of junior baseball programs and stuff are less. And soccer is everywhere because every kid can play it, and mom doesn't want her kid playing football and all this kind of stuff. But it's growing. And now, like in this market, which is a rapidly growing market in North Carolina, we're going to have Major League Soccer, and it's going to take off.
You know, I'm on record. It's going to be more popular than the Panthers or Hornets. That's a matter of when, not quickly. If.
Well, because you have a huge Hispanic population here now, a European population, folks from Germany, a lot of companies here. There's a lot of interest in football.
Yep. You know? And the other thing I'd add to that is people like me, where I'm always going to cheer for the Bears over the Panthers, the Bulls over the Hornets.
Right.
But for soccer, the Chicago Fire started when I was 15 years old. MLS wasn't a big thing. I have no attachment. I've never been to a Chicago Fire game. I have no attachment to it. So the Charlotte Football Club, that soccer team, that's going to be my MLS team. And that's going to be the case for a lot of the millennials that have moved here from other cities, where they're still going to be fans of other teams and hockey, baseball, basketball, football. But this soccer team, that's going to be their team.
Well, I agree with you there, except on one point. I moved around a bunch and I root for all the teams and the places I lived, except when they're playing the team where I live now. So, if the Cleveland Browns were playing Carolina, I'd probably, in my old spirit, root for the Browns. Now I've lived here long enough. I could care less. But, I rooted for the Bears. I rooted for the Saints. I lived in those places. So I still watch and want to see them do well as long as they're not playing the two teams head to head. But that thing about soccer, just on the precipice of passing baseball. And I've said for a decade, baseball, they moved their playoffs for TV money. It started 8:30 at night. So there's no fifth grader staying up watching the games. The games are too slow. They end at midnight. So unless you tape it and your kid's a real nut job and really loves baseball, they're not seeing any of it. And then the other thing that I would say for baseball is that baseball, in my mind, does need to do what the NBA does. And in fact, that's kind of what golf is trying to do right now with this top 10 thing, where you got into Phil and
the PIP.
Yeah, but they're trying to say social media influencers. Well, the NBA was ahead of the curve on that. They promoted their stars irregardless of team. Well, the NFL doesn't do that. I mean, they just don't.
The NFL doesn't need to do anything. The only thing the NFL does.
I don't mean NFL. I'm sorry. I meant baseball. So baseball should be, they should be promoting Scherzer as across all lines. It doesn't matter who he plays.
They're not even at that level, though. The MLB's biggest mistake, you can't even share their content. They delete it from social media. They shut down accounts that share highlights because they say that's ours. They don't get it. They don't understand how social media works. The NBA lets everything go because they're smart enough to realize if people watch highlights, that's engagement. You're building fans. It's all good. MLB is still living literally in the 1980s saying that's our copyright product. You can't share that video without our permission.
They're living in the early 20th century where they can't be broken up or sued as a monopoly.
Yeah, it's insane. We could not even start a baseball league. We could XFL. You see it in hockey. You see it in soccer. You see it in basketball. Ice Cube's got the Big Three League, the basketball tournament. But MLB has that antitrust exemption. And to your point, if this thing keeps escalating and the owners really want to fuck around, pardon my language, I'm very fired up about this, then this thing could escalate to MLB, the Players Association, getting some lawyers and challenging that antitrust exemption.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, well, that would blow up this season, but I agree with you. I mean, for a fact, I've said before that I think I love the minor league product. And don't get me wrong, this place behind me is like, going to heaven or going to Boston. There's certain places for baseball, LA, just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like the vines in the center field wall, or it's just not like it. But I just feel like they've lost it. And as far as the game goes, with all I think they got to back up the truck. I know you're a big numbers guy, but they got to back up the truck here a little bit, where they don't throw a no-hitter with 8 pitchers. And
well, what a missed opportunity. They should have used this time like the other leagues do, NBA, NFL, NHL. Let's structure the league so it's the best product for the fans. That's what they should have been focused on during this time. Instead, the owners waited 63 days after implementing a lockout to have any negotiations, invented a fake deadline, and tried to hold a gun to the players' heads. But yes, this was the perfect time to go to some basic issues. What do we like? I love in terms of the 8 pitchers that you brought up. What if we did something where there's a double hook? So there's a designated hitter in the lineup, but once you pull your starting pitcher, that designated hitter is out and it's replaced by whoever you have pitching. That strongly incentivizes leading starting pitchers in the game. That's a problem. We need to speed up the game significantly. We need more balls in play. We don't need to have human umpires anymore. There was a lot of golden opportunities, and it's all going to get completely wasted here.
Yeah,
well, that's why I'm crazy enough where I'm ready to cancel if canceling this season significantly improves the product for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that.
Well,
That's where I'm at.
I mean, I know it's TV money and it's revenue on all that, but I go right there, right back to the point where I think the NBA, if they're going to play and bring in more teams into the playoffs and have a play-in playoff and all this stuff, then they need to play 60 games.
Yeah, what
They
the
don't
hell do you need
81.
100?
These guys don't. Do you think nobody on LA even cares except LeBron? I mean, and they're 7 games under 500 and they suck. But
And here's the
everybody's still talking about the Lakers on television. But baseball is the same thing. Now, you know, in my lifetime, it went from 156 to 162 or whatever, because that was the whole argument about Roger Maris hit his 61st home run in those 7 additional games over Babe Ruth. So it didn't count. Everybody, I mean, he went down a bad road with fans for a while until later. But anyways, I digress. The point to that is, I think they've got to make changes. I just don't know. I'm serious when I say it's not going to go away as a sport. Don't get me wrong there, but
it's already slipping in terms of
give you an example. Here's an example of making changes and recognizing what you did and trying to come back to the fan. NASCAR.
Yeah,
NASCAR
great
is
example.
uniquely to the South, but they're coming back. They're changing. They promote their drivers, young drivers from all over the country. They're promoting ethnicity now.
They made the cars look like the stock cars. Yeah.
They've got Jordan as an owner. They've got Brad Doherty as an owner. I mean, they really are making an effort, and they're changing. They've got a new car. They're going back to shorter tracks, shorter
great
races.
Example. Yep.
If you remember, IndyCar blew themselves up back 15 years ago, how that worked. And they finally figured it out, went to shorter races, promote their stars and that kind of thing. So my gut tells me that in the United States with time, Major League Soccer and football, especially with the more melting pot of a country we're becoming, is going to overtake baseball.
Yeah, the pie is already shrinking just because people have more interests and all that. And so you mentioned NASCAR. All these other leagues are constantly thinking of ways to enhance the product. The NBA, the commissioner and the ownership group acknowledges the season is probably too long. So they're probably going to shorten it at some point and then do like a mid-season tournament to try to spice it up. You look at the NFL, they change their damn rules every year to encourage offense, to keep quarterbacks healthy. And if they don't like something, like when we had that pass interference replay thing, they get rid of it. They're constantly evaluating their product. And this baseball ownership group, and bringing it back to the clown reference from earlier, who, by the way, he chuckled yesterday on camera before he delivered the message that he was canceling games. They're just absolutely clueless. And it's become extremely obvious to me that this ownership group is more concerned about their earnings next month, next year, than in 20 years. Because what they're doing right now is significantly impacting baseball revenues 20 years from now, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, and I go back, this has nothing to do with that, but if right now, as a sports nut, all you guys sitting out there that are listening to us, if I had you knock down your top 5 playoff sporting, how would you rank the top 5, and not picking your favorite sport? And for me, the top of the line pulls off as always hockey. And I'm not a hockey fan. I mean, I grew up in the North and I played hockey on the creek out back, but I wasn't, born with the Blackhawks, or except for the Golden Jet, or something, Bobby Hall. But back then it was Canadian, Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton stuff. But hockey playoffs just go so fast and they're so much fun. And, a shootout in soccer is pretty cool too. But in the NFL playoffs this year were
that was the best of all time.
Yeah, they were spectacular. But so I don't know. And I enjoyed baseball playoffs and the one and done play-in game, but it seems so sad after playing 160 some games to have one game be the thing, but that's okay. But anyways, that was just an aside. I really think that baseball's got to wake up, or they're gonna, they're going to be here, but they're going to become a second tier. They're going to become like the American Lacrosse League or something. I don't know.
I agree. It's going to go
Okay.
down. And by the way, as we segue into a little college basketball, I looked it up. Donald Williams,
Yep.
5 for 7 from 3 against Kansas in the semifinal, and then 5 for 7 from 3 against Michigan in the final. He was shooting 72% from 3 in the Final Four. I didn't realize that. That absolutely was the difference.
Yeah, and just as a side, that's the only reason Juwan Howard slapped that other coach, because he was tired of people using timeouts when they didn't have one. So that I heard that, but Chris wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't around to get yelled at.
That's a good show.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
That James Worthy and Freddie Brown played together at Gastonia. I think it was Hunter Huss High School, just outside of Charlotte. And so on the Georgetown game, when they won back in '83, that's totally different. I just went back a decade, but that was the one where Worthy called for him and said, "Throw me the ball, Freddie," and Freddie threw it to him. It was instinctive. And then Worthy ran down the court, and that was the end of the game. Anyways, that had nothing to do with the timeout. I got lost there. But the NCAA, yeah, you're right. So I went through, and it, like you said, this last weekend was just murderer's row where everybody lost. Never happened, And then they're going through all these teams, and the deal is, the ACC, for example, is down. The Big Ten was up. The SEC has been up, and you look at these, but
the Big 12 is really good too, really deep. The Big 12 is really deep.
Well, and Gonzaga's Gonzaga, except who's their nemesis, and they beat them. St. Mary's. Yeah, and St. Mary's gets them every year, and so you go, well, who's, and like, so for example, when you go to fill out your brackets, so I went through the top. Here's the top teams as of Monday: Zags, Arizona, Baylor, Duke, Auburn, Kansas, Kentucky, Purdue, Providence, Wisconsin, Villanova's 11, Illinois 20, and Murray State has the best record in the top 25 at
they're a lock.
28-2.
They're a lock.
Yeah, well, and remember Ja Morant. Don't forget, there may be some guy on Murray State that's like that none of us have. We don't even know who the heck it is. So yeah, I think this tournament, I know we've talked about it before, but I think this one is wide open.
It's totally unique too, because you have some of these, like Iowa has 2 players that are in their 6th year, because they get the extra COVID year. So some of these teams are going to be more experienced and more deep. You mentioned the transfer portal earlier. That's thrown a wrench into things. So to me, there's just more parity, whereas last year it was kind of Gonzaga and Baylor, and then that's how it turned out. This year, it's wide open. And one thing I'm doing, I've actually got a thread cooking on Twitter at LBill Sports. I'm looking at the smaller conferences right now, the mid-majors,
like
trying to figure out, that's one of them, Southern Conference, Furman. I'll get to them in a minute. And I'm trying to figure out, I usually like to try to watch a little bit of the championship games of those mid-major conferences. They're always in like a high school gym, and the camera, you can't see the corner of the court. It's just kind of fun. I'm trying to figure out, people that want to see upsets, we want to see mid-majors make the Sweet 16. Who should we be rooting for? So like OVC, the Ohio Valley Conference, that's where Murray State is. They're a lock. They're going to be in the tournament, even if they lose in their conference championship game, their top 25 team. So let's root for Belmont to win that conference, so we get 2 mid-majors coming out of that conference. So that's part of the exercise that I'm going through. And at the Southern Conference, I discovered Furman Hoops, and they have the perfect recipe for an upset. They rank 2nd in 3-point attempts as a percentage of total attempts. They live by the 3. That automatically gives them a chance. They're 275th in tempo. Less possessions, more variance. Anytime you shrink that sample size of possessions, there's more of an opportunity for upsets. They play slow and they hit threes. They're 20th in offensive efficiency, so they can score, and they're 34th in steal percentage. So if they get behind late in the game, they can steal without fouling. So I am all in on Furman. Hopefully they can pull out the Southern Conference. So I'm looking for those teams to root for in these mid-major conference tournaments.
Well, and that's exactly how you have to do it with the 3-point shot now, because I mean, it's been around, like we were just talking about Donald Williams in the 90s, but
yeah.
Oh, heck, you can go back to 1983 when they first put it in and Valvano's championship, and they were shooting threes with Wittenberg and Lowe. But that changed the game, but it took time. But now, like I saw the evolution in the ACC where Coach K went through, and he made a transition. North Carolina was always push, 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 run, 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 had great big men and great point guards. And Duke got into this thing, I don't know, it was in the early 2000s, like JJ Redick kind of guys, where they figured out, okay, we'll get these great 3-point shooters, and when they're hot, we can beat anybody every night. But if they have an off night, you can lose. And if that off night comes in the second round of the tournament, out you go. And that happened to them a few times.
Happens to them a lot, actually.
They got sent out west and that. Well, and that's the thing. They're ranked third this year. And I've watched and they're dominant in the ACC, but the ACC's down. I mean, they keep calling North Carolina a bubble team, and they're 22-8. And they're third place in the ACC, and they get a bye in the first 2 rounds. I'm going, but they're a bubble team? Come on, guys. So when they're doing this, they're saying it's so weak. I'm going, So you're right. You have to really take a look at study this bracketology this year, folks. You're going to have to give it a really good look. I don't know. So that's a good call though, Bill, about looking at that and looking at those and to your point, those tournaments are all this week.
Yeah, they're already starting. So I'm including the date and time of the championship games in this Twitter thread that I'm doing at L Bill Sports. So I'm doing it for my own selfish reasons, but if people want to get out there and kind of have a rooting guide, if you're going to sit down and watch mid-majors, I'm going to get into the Summit League tomorrow. I already can tell you the South Dakota State Jackrabbits already jump off the page in my initial review.
Is this on Twitter at
Yep. I'm getting this going on Twitter, and I'm making sure I'm getting them out there before some of these teams get upset. Because that's the thing. We all love upsets in March, but if you really want to see mid-majors advance deep into the tournament, you want the best mid-majors to get there. So I know it's a cool story when like that 8 seed in one of these smaller conferences wins their conference tournament, but they're going to have a hell of an uphill climb to actually do any damage in the big dance. So I am rooting for the best mid-majors to get into the big dance.
I'm with you there. I was thinking about quick shift. This is just over to the NBA a little bit. And I was kind of sitting there kind of analyzing, how it's going to play out. And, everybody talks about the Nets and tell me if I'm wrong. I've got my final 4 right now. And my final 4 is Golden State, Phoenix, Milwaukee, and Philly. And I'm going, you're never going to convince me that the 3 guys in Brooklyn are going to do anything together. That ain't happening.
I'm rooting for Ben Simmons. I like a redemption story. I'd like to see him do well. But then, it's hard for me to get behind Kyrie Irving. So that's kind of where my Brooklyn Nets fandom ends.
Yeah, I've seen Kyrie. Kyrie's been a bad man in Cleveland, personally, everywhere he's gone. So
there's a correlation there of issues.
I'm kind of hoping he gets traded and plays quarterback for Green Bay. I mean, I think that would be a good place for him. And then Rodgers can go play guard for the Nets. They're 2 in this, No,
I agree with those final 4. The thing about the Eastern Conference is so deep that we might get a crazy first round matchup of like Boston, Philly. Imagine if that's the guys that were traded for each other, the 2 most talented, I'm not saying the best, the 2 most talented teams in that conference in the first round. I mean, it's going to be fun. The Hornets should sneak into the play-in tournament. It would be great to see them get out of that and play the 1 seed, probably the Heat in the first round.
I was going to say everybody's
experience.
Yeah, I was going to say right there, nobody's talking about the Heat.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know, but that's one of those teams that just kind of slips under the radar. They got good coaching, good leadership.
And they're built for the postseason because they are so stout defensively. And you remember Victor Oladipo played for Indiana back in the day.
Right.
He's coming back. He's going to be coming off the bench for them. They're a dangerous team.
This is totally off the thing. This is a local shout out. I just thought of this one. I forgot about it, and I want to do is Weddington High School basketball. It's in Union County, North Carolina. And think about it. This team's won like 40 games in a row. They're into the regional finals or whatever in high school basketball in the largest, whether it's 4A or 5A, I don't remember, in North Carolina. But what makes them unique is on their team, they're truly a team. They don't have any college D1 recruits.
Wow.
It's in fact, I'm not even sure they got D2 recruits.
It's like Hoosiers. Is Gene Hackman coaching the boys?
It's just something. Look them up. It's just
I need to pay more attention to North Carolina Charlotte high school basketball because it's legit.
Yeah,
I'll definitely be trying to get to some games with Walker, my son.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of city. It's just like Chicago inner city. I never understood why Northwestern couldn't get one or two guys out of South Side, because it's a the guy who knew how to recruit Chicago. He kind of hung out in the Corn State for a little bit and then went out to the desert. And that was the man that recruit Chicago, Lute Olson. He was the man. He knew how to recruit the South Side. So just a little shout out to him. I really liked him as a coach. Well, you got anything? I got a few quotes here. You got anything else you want to throw out there to the people?
I just have actually a question for you before you go to the big soccer match on Saturday. What are you expecting? What are you excited for? Just give us a little primer here.
Well, I watched it the other day with my son, who actually studies it. He never played it, but he studies he reads books on it and how you play offense, defense. And I watched it with him, and it was kind of fun. And I mean, if you watched it as a secondary fan the other day and are knowledgeable enough about soccer, and I played in high school, but that's a long time ago. But if you did, they played that game with passion. They really were on the offensive. And when they scored a very early goal that was called offsides, which without TV, you wouldn't have known it. It was that close, but it was offsides. But anyways, the whole game, they lost 3-0, but they had 2 of the goals were deflected goals and stuff. And for an expansion team, it was pretty exciting, because anybody who's been in a town that got an expansion, anything, knows that the town's just excited about it, and they know they're going to suck. Okay. I go back to the 90s with the Hornets here. I remember when the Hornets first came to Charlotte, I used to say I met myself coming and going on Tyvola Road, because we went to all 41 home games.
Holy shit.
Holy shit is right. I look back on that and go, what was I thinking? Now you're lucky if I go to one, so more power to what's his name sitting on the Knicks sideline, the
Spike Lee.
Yeah, Spike Lee. Anyways, it
was really exciting. I agree with you. It was more exciting than I thought it was going to be. And I'm going to go out of my way to keep watching them. And, these younger kids that are playing soccer, that are into soccer, that maybe have followed a European team, will now have their own hometown team. And outside of this opening game, I think ticket prices will be pretty reasonable.
And there's a kid on the team is 18 years old and is from Charlotte, isn't he?
Yeah, and they have the clubs here where I guess I'm kind of over my skis here. I'm not very knowledgeable on this topic, but I guess these local academies, in theory, help develop some of the players that will ultimately play on the Charlotte Football Club, and that'll be so cool.
Yeah, one of Richard's buddies' son they have a club here, and he's like 10 or 11, and then they go over to Spain. They're linked to their summers. They're linked to Barcelona, so they have farm teams here for Barcelona. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, they already understand the U.S. is going to be a hotbed of developing talent. So,
yeah, and your point earlier about baseball, the pace of play, like soccer, I know it's not just shooting on goal over and over, but it's exciting. There's stuff happening, and it's a 45-minute half, and then you can take a halftime and go to the bathroom or get a bite to eat, and then it's a 45-minute half, and then it's over. It's very digestible.
Exactly. And the clock doesn't stop except for, so the
Yeah,
normal,
you don't have like 20, you don't have a free throw parade like we're going to watch here in
Right.
March at the end of the game. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the usual time is the overage times average about 4 to 5 minutes. So each half is 50 minutes, and then they get a 15-minute halftime. But you're right, the game starts at 7:30. By 9:40, you're in your car leaving.
Yep.
And so I remember when I was a kid going to Ohio State football games, they'd all kick off at 1:30, and we were on the road in our car on the way home by 4:10. Think about that.
Oh yeah. Well, you want to talk about an attendance
that was 2.5 hours later. We're out of there.
Well,
when was the last time you went to a college football game? 3 hours is wonderful, and whatever.
Oh, you'll get that. That's a topic for another show. College football, the attendance is a crisis for college football. I'm not overstating that. It is a crisis.
Yes, because it's just too easy to watch, and they got too much exposure.
And they give you a week notice on when the game could be at noon. It could be at 7:30 p.m. But yeah, we'll save that for a different show. That's a whole different.
Yeah,
show.
I hate that stuff. It's noon, 3:30, or 8.
Yeah,
and they tell you the week before. And I get season tickets to North Carolina football, and I don't know. And it's just crazy. And I hate 8 o'clocks. The older I get, so I had to hang out all. Yeah. Well, I got a few quotes here to end it up. So I got some baseball quotes. So you'll like these. First of all, and by the way, you see my name today, don't you?
Babe.
If you're watching on YouTube, I'm Babe Zollinger for this show. So, number 1 quote: never let the fear of striking out get in the way. Babe Ruth. Then here's another one. He's a local favorite for Chicago, especially because what's his name threw him on the ground, the pitcher from New York, I think it was. What you lack in talent can be made up with desire, hustle, and giving 110% all the time. Don Zimmer. Remember him?
Yeah, Pedro threw him down. Pedro Martinez. Pedro.
And then, of course, this is my favorite one because you got to go with a yogiism to close it out. Baseball is 90% mental. The other 50% is physical.
That's classic Yogi right there.
Yeah, that's a classic Yogi. You come to the fork in the road, you take it.
I got a trivia question here to wrap it up. When's the last time Iowa made it past the first weekend
in basketball
of the NCAA tournament? Made it to the Sweet 16.
Wow.
And who was the coach? Bonus points.
Golly, that you got me on. I probably could come up with the coach if I thought about it, but I can't.
1999.
Wow.
Tom Davis, Dr.
Tom Davis,
who they forced out for Steve Alford.
Yeah, where's Steve hanging out now?
Oh, some non-big time university, but we're due. Iowa fans are due. We've had a pretty good team the last few years. We've been top 40 in terms of KenPom for the last 3 years without a day outside of that. Fran McCaffrey's done a real nice job. And we are due. We deserve it. Let's go. That's all I want is to get to the Sweet 16.
Well, basketball is all about that. A lot of it is the draw, and a lot of it's luck.
Yep.
Especially to get to the Sweet 16, and then after that, the cream usually rises. You can get a Cinderella that squeaks through there every once in a while, but usually once you get to the Final Four, there's that's pretty much over. So. Well, we enjoyed having everybody this week. Picking and putting. We're on YouTube and all those other platforms. We look forward to continuing the show. We'll be back in a couple weeks probably. And we're going to continue our opportunities to bring in guests, especially from the golfing world. hoping to bring in a Peter Millar rep to talk about all the new changes in clothing and things that are all the shirts and things you can wear now that are waterproofed and very light, and give you like 60 sunscreen, all sorts of neat stuff. Light shoes that weigh like, 10 ounces, but you can, wear from your house to the golf course. There's a lot of cool equipment out there. So anyways, we'll look forward to talking about that. We'll line that up. And for all you folks out there, have a good start to the basketball playoffs. We're all excited about it.
Happy March Muddiness.
Yeah, March Muddiness.
March Muddiness, excuse me.
Maybe baseball figure it out. Maybe they won't. And who cares? Because we'll get into March Madness, and we'll all, and probably we'll have a show back just in time to go over the brackets, because they'll start on that Thursday. They'll have the play-ins on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Dayton, I think. But we'll go through all that, and we'll look forward to it. So we'll see you, Billy.
Thanks, everybody. Happy March Muddiness.
Happy March Muddiness to everybody. Have a good one. See you later.